It was January 30th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so violent, so consuming, drove me from my bed to the beach shoreline near my home, and there, surrounded by the rhythmic crash of invisible waves against sand I could barely see, the salt-thick air clinging to my skin like a warning, the horizon just beginning to blush with the promise of dawn, Jesus appeared before me and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood about the coming days. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. You've been chosen to hear this, and what I'm about to share with you, what Jesus revealed to me on that beach in the pre-dawn darkness, will either transform your life or you'll dismiss it and face February 8th through 14th completely unprepared. The choice, as it always is, remains yours. But first, before I go any further, I need you to do something. I need you to leave your prayer requests in the comments below. Not casual requests, not surface-level concerns. I'm talking about the deep things, the things you're afraid to say out loud, the burdens crushing you, the fears that wake you at 3 a.m. Leave them below, and I promise you, I will pray over every single one. This community, this family of true believers, we carry each other's burdens. That's what we do, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Click that button, because what I'm sharing isn't for the casual observer. It's not for the lukewarm. It's not for those who want their ears tickled with comfortable messages. This is for the remnant, the marked ones, the believers who are willing to hear hard truth even when it costs them something. Many of you know me from The Chosen, where I've had the profound honor of portraying Jesus Christ. That role has changed my life in ways I'm still discovering. It's brought me closer to Him than I ever imagined possible. It's also opened doors of revelation I never knew existed. When you spend years studying His words, His mannerisms, His heart, something happens. The line between performance and reality begins to blur, not because I'm confused about who I am, but because He becomes more real than the air you breathe. And that's exactly what happened on that beach. I hadn't planned to be there. I'd gone to bed around midnight, exhausted from a long day of filming and interviews. But at 2:30 a.m., I jolted awake with a sensation I can only describe as being pulled, not physically, but spiritually, like a hook had caught something deep in my chest and was drawing me forward. I tried to pray it away. I tried to go back to sleep, but the pull only intensified. So I got dressed in the dark, grabbed a jacket, and drove to the beach. The parking lot was empty, completely deserted. The streetlights cast long, sickly yellow shadows across the pavement, and beyond them I could hear the ocean, that eternal, restless sound that never stops, never sleeps. The air temperature had dropped to maybe 55 degrees, unusual for this time of year, and I could see my breath forming small clouds that dissipated almost immediately in the salt wind. I walked down the wooden steps to the sand, my shoes crunching against the weathered planks. The beach stretched out before me in shades of gray and black, the sand still holding the coolness of night. The waves were moderate, rolling in with a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Crash, hiss, retreat, crash, hiss, retreat. The horizon was just beginning to show the faintest line of deep purple, that moment before dawn when the world holds its breath. I walked maybe 50 yards down the beach, away from the stairs, away from the parking lot, away from anything man-made. I wanted to be alone. I needed to understand why I'd been pulled from sleep with such urgency. And then I felt Him. Before I saw anything, I felt His presence. It's impossible to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. The air itself seemed to thicken, to become charged with something beyond electricity, beyond energy. The temperature around me shifted, not warmer, not colder, but different, more alive. The sound of the waves seemed to fade into the background like someone had turned down the volume on reality itself. I turned around, and there He was. Jesus stood perhaps 10 feet from me, His form somehow both solid and radiant at once. He wasn't glowing like in paintings or movies. It was subtler than that, more real, like He was more present, more actual than everything else around Him. The pre-dawn light seemed to bend toward Him, to acknowledge Him. His eyes, I'll never forget His eyes, held an expression I'd studied for years while preparing for The Chosen, but seeing it in person, in reality, was completely different. He looked grieved, deeply, profoundly grieved. "Jonathan," He said, and His voice carried over the sound of the waves without being loud. It simply was. "Do you know why you're here?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. All I could do was shake my head. "My February 8th through 14th, He said, taking a step closer. The sand beneath His feet didn't shift or sink. 7 days that will test my church in ways they are not prepared for. 7 days that will separate the wheat from the chaff. 7 days that will reveal who truly knows me and who has simply known about me. The wind picked up suddenly, whipping my jacket around me, sending sand skittering across the beach in small, snake-like patterns. But around Jesus, the air remained perfectly still. "Lord," I finally managed to whisper, "what happens during those days?" His expression shifted, not to anger, but to something more painful. Disappointment mixed with determination. "A shaking," he said, "not of the earth, though the earth will respond. A shaking of hearts, of faith, of everything my people have built their lives upon. Many have built on sand, Jonathan. They've built on feelings, on experiences, on the approval of others, on comfort, on prosperity, on programs and personalities. And when the waves come, and they are coming, those foundations will not hold." He gestured toward the ocean, and as he did, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The waves began to grow, not physically, the actual ocean remained unchanged, but in my vision, in my spiritual sight, I saw massive walls of water rising from the depths, towering, crushing waves that dwarfed anything nature could produce. And I saw people, millions of people, standing on the beach, their backs to the ocean, completely unaware of what was coming. They were busy, so busy. They were on their phones, taking selfies, arguing with each other, building elaborate sand castles, collecting shells, sunbathing. Some were even holding Bibles, sitting in circles, discussing theology, but none of them, not one, was looking at the ocean. "They don't see it," I breathed. "They don't want to see it," Jesus corrected gently. "I've been warning them, through my word, through my prophets, through the signs all around them, but they've become experts at explaining away everything that makes them uncomfortable. They've learned to spiritualize everything so they never have to actually change anything." The vision intensified. I saw the dates appear in the sky above the ocean like burning letters. February 8th to 14th, 2026. "What specifically happens?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What should people prepare for?" Jesus turned to face me fully, and the grief in his eyes deepened. "A convergence," he said. "Events that have been set in motion will collide during those 7 days. Financial systems will shudder. Political tensions will spike. Natural disasters will strike in unexpected places. But more than any of that, more than the external circumstances, there will be a spiritual assault unlike anything this generation has experienced." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The enemy knows his time is short. He's been preparing for this, and he's going to target the one thing most of my people have neglected, their actual, intimate relationship with me, not their knowledge about me, not their church attendance, not their theological positions, their relationship, their connection, their ability to hear my voice in the chaos." The wind grew stronger, and now the actual waves began to respond, growing larger, more aggressive. The sky continued to lighten, streaks of orange and pink beginning to paint the horizon, but the beauty felt ominous now, like a warning. "During those 7 days," Jesus continued, "many who call themselves by my name will panic. They'll realize they don't actually know how to hear my voice. They've been hearing their pastors' voices, their favorite teachers' voices, their own internal dialogue, but not mine. And when everything they've relied on begins to shake, when their usual sources of comfort and guidance fail them, they'll discover they're spiritually alone. And that terror, that realization, will be worse than any external circumstance." I felt tears streaming down my face, the salt from them mixed with the salt spray from the ocean. "But Lord," I said, "why are you telling me this? What am I supposed to do with this information?" He smiled then, but it was a sad smile. A smile that carried the weight of knowing most people wouldn't listen. "You're going to warn them," he said. "You're going to tell them exactly what I've shown you, and most will ignore it. Some will mock it. Others will explain it away. But a remnant, a marked remnant, will hear and prepare, and those are the ones who will not only survive what's coming, but will become beacons of light in the darkness. They'll be the ones others run to when everything falls apart." He took another step closer, and now he was near enough that I could have reached out and touched him. The presence emanating from him was overwhelming. Love and holiness and power all mixed together in a way that made me want to fall on my face and never get up. "Tell them this," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, but somehow I heard every word with perfect clarity. "The preparation isn't about stockpiling food or water, though wisdom in practical matters is good. The preparation isn't about having the right theology or attending the right church, though truth matters. The preparation is about intimacy, about learning to recognize my voice so clearly that no other voice can deceive them, about spending time in my presence until my presence becomes more real than their circumstances. The vision of the waves returned, but this time I saw something different. Among the millions standing on the beach with their backs to the ocean, there were scattered individuals, maybe 1 in 100, maybe fewer, who were facing the water. They saw the waves coming, and they weren't panicking. They were calm, anchored, and as the waves crashed toward the shore, these individuals began to glow with the same quality of light that surrounded Jesus. The waves hit them and parted around them, unable to move them, unable to shake them. "Those are the prepared ones," Jesus said, following my gaze. "Those are the ones who will stand, not because they're stronger or smarter or more talented, but because they know me, actually know me. They've invested the time, they've paid the price of intimacy, they've learned to abide." The sun was rising now, the full orb beginning to peak above the horizon, turning the ocean into liquid gold. The beauty was breathtaking, but I couldn't shake the weight of what I'd just been shown. "How do they prepare?" I asked desperately. "What do I tell them to do?" "I'll show you," Jesus said, "but not all at once. You couldn't bear it all at once. Come back tomorrow night, same time, same place. There's more you need to see, more you need to understand." And then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. The sound of the waves rushed back in, loud and immediate. The wind hit me full force, and I staggered slightly, suddenly aware of how cold I was, how my legs were shaking, how my face was wet with tears and salt spray. I stood there for a long time, watching the sun rise, watching the beach slowly transform from gray to gold. A few early morning joggers appeared in the distance. A dog barked somewhere. Life continued, normal and mundane, completely unaware that Jesus had just stood on this beach and delivered a warning that could save thousands of souls. I'm sharing this with you now because you need to know. You need to prepare. February 8th through 14th, 2026. Mark those dates. Write them down. Don't dismiss this. Don't explain it away. Don't wait until it's too late. Tomorrow night, I'll share what happened during my second encounter with Jesus. The revelations became deeper, more specific, more urgent. But I need you to do something right now. Today, before you watch another video or scroll to another post, I need you to get alone with God, not to pray at Him, not to recite memorized prayers, but to actually get quiet and listen. Ask Him if what I'm sharing is true. Ask Him what He wants you to know. Ask Him how He wants you to prepare. Because here's what I know with absolute certainty. You were meant to see this message. The algorithm didn't randomly show it to you. Your friend didn't accidentally share it. You didn't stumble across it by chance. You've been marked. You've been chosen to hear this warning. The question is, what will you do with it? Tomorrow night, I'll be back with part 2. The second encounter, the deeper revelations, the specific instructions Jesus gave me about how to prepare your heart for what's coming. Until then, leave your prayer requests below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And most importantly, get alone with God. Time is shorter than you think. The waves are coming, but you don't have to be swept away. It was January 31st, 2026, at 2:47 a.m., the exact same time as the night before, when I found myself once again being pulled from sleep with that same irresistible urgency. But this time, I knew where I was going. This time, I was expecting it. What I wasn't expecting was how much more intense this second encounter would be. I drove to the same beach, parked in the same empty lot, but as I stepped out of my car, I immediately sensed that something was different. The air felt heavier, charged with an electricity that made the hair on my arms stand up. The temperature had dropped even further. I'd guess it was around 48 degrees, and the wind coming off the ocean carried a bite that cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. The sky was overcast tonight, thick clouds obscuring the stars, and the darkness felt more complete, more absolute. The only light came from the distant street lamps and the faint bioluminescence in the waves, that eerie blue-green glow that sometimes appears in the surf. Each wave that crashed left trails of ghostly light on the sand before fading back into darkness. I made my way down the wooden steps, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The beach was completely deserted again, but tonight it felt different. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something momentous to happen. I walked to almost the exact spot where I'd stood the night before. I could still see my footprints from yesterday, partially eroded by the tide but still visible in the sand. I stood there facing the ocean, listening to the waves, feeling the wind, and I waited. I didn't have to wait long. The air shifted first. That same thickening, that same sense of reality bending around a presence too large to be contained by physical space. But tonight, the shift was more dramatic. The wind, which had been gusting steadily, suddenly stopped completely. Not gradually, instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. The waves continued their rhythm, but even their sound seemed muted, distant. I turned, and Jesus was there. But tonight, he looked different. The grief was still in his eyes, but it was mixed with something else now. Urgency, intensity, a kind of holy determination that made my breath catch in my throat. "You came back," he said, and there was approval in his voice. "You told me to," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Many don't," he said, taking a step closer. "Many receive a word, a warning, a revelation, and then they go back to their lives. They tell themselves it was just a dream, just their imagination, just stress or bad pizza. They explain it away because actually responding would cost them something, would require them to change, would force them to admit they've been living at a distance from me." He gestured toward the ocean, and immediately my vision shifted. I was seeing both the physical beach and something else, a spiritual reality overlaid on top of it. The ocean before me transformed into something vast and terrible. The waves I'd seen in yesterday's vision returned, but now they were closer, more detailed, more horrifying in their power. "February 8th, Jesus said, his voice carrying a weight that made the words feel like physical things. "It begins on February 8th, a Saturday. Most of my people will be going about their normal routines, sleeping in, running errands, planning their Sundays, completely unaware that the spiritual atmosphere has shifted, completely unprepared for what's being unleashed. In the vision, I saw that date appear again, February 8th, 2026, but this time I saw more detail. I saw news headlines flashing across the sky like lightning, financial markets in chaos, political tensions erupting, natural disasters striking multiple locations simultaneously. But more than that, I saw the spiritual realm. I saw demonic forces, and I don't use that term lightly or dramatically, being released in unprecedented numbers. They looked like shadows with substance, like darkness given form and purpose, and they were targeting churches, families, individual believers. But they weren't attacking with obvious evil. They were attacking with deception, with confusion, with fear, with division. "The enemy's strategy," Jesus said, watching me take in the vision, "has always been the same. He can't destroy my church from the outside. Persecution only makes it stronger. So he works from the inside. He sows doubt. He creates division. He promotes comfort over conviction. He elevates personalities over my presence. He makes people busy with good things, so they neglect the best thing, intimacy with me." He turned to face me directly, and the intensity in his eyes made me want to look away, but I couldn't. "During these 7 days, February 8th through 14th, the enemy is going to accelerate everything he's been building toward. He's going to expose every weak foundation, every compromise, every area where my people have been playing church instead of being the church, and many, many believers are going to fall, not into obvious sin necessarily, but into fear, into doubt, into spiritual paralysis, into deception." The vision shifted again. Now I saw inside homes, inside churches, inside the hearts of believers. I saw a woman I didn't recognize sitting in her living room, scrolling through her phone, reading news headline after news headline, feeling panic rising in her chest. She tried to pray, but the words felt empty, hollow. She'd been a Christian for 20 years, attended church regularly, knew all the right answers. But in this moment of crisis, she realized she didn't actually know how to connect with God. She knew about Him, but she didn't know Him. I saw a pastor in his office staring at his computer screen, trying to write a sermon that would calm his congregation's fears. But he himself was terrified. He'd built his ministry on programs and personality, on being relevant and relatable. But now, facing something that required genuine spiritual authority, he felt completely inadequate. He'd been so busy building a church that he'd neglected building his relationship with the one the church was supposed to be about. I saw a young man, maybe in his 20s, who'd grown up in church, who could quote scripture, who'd been on mission trips and served in youth ministry. But when the pressure came, when the spiritual assault intensified, he had no root system. His faith had been inherited, not owned, borrowed, not built. And when the storm hit, he had nothing to anchor to. "This is what breaks my heart," Jesus said, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. Not the external circumstances, not the chaos in the world, but watching my people, people who bear my name, who claim to follow me, discover in their moment of greatest need that they don't actually know me, that they've been following a system, a culture, a set of beliefs about me, but not me myself. Tears were streaming down my face again. The weight of what I was seeing, what I was hearing, was almost unbearable. But Lord, I said, my voice breaking, how did it get this bad? How did we get so far off track? He was quiet for a moment, and in that silence, the wind picked up again, colder now, carrying spray from the waves that stung my face. Slowly, he finally said, gradually, one compromise at a time, one distraction at a time, one busy season that never ended, one prayer time skipped that became a habit, one Bible reading replaced with a podcast about the Bible, one worship service attended out of obligation instead of desire, one year that became 5, that became 10, that became 20, all while maintaining the appearance of faith but losing the substance of it. He began to walk along the beach, and I followed, my feet sinking into the cold sand with each step. The bioluminescence in the waves grew brighter, creating an otherworldly glow that illuminated his face from below. I'm not talking about unbelievers, he continued. I'm not talking about people who've rejected me. I'm talking about my church, my bride, people who genuinely believe they're following me, but who've settled for a form of godliness while denying its power, people who've replaced transformation with information, people who've substituted community for intimacy, people who've exchanged my presence for programs about my presence. We walked in silence for a few moments, the only sound the crash of waves and the cry of a distant seagull. The sky was beginning to show the first hints of pre-dawn light, that deep blue that comes before purple, before pink, before gold. Tell me something, Jonathan, Jesus said, stopping and turning to face me. In your own life, in your own walk with me, be honest. How much time do you spend actually with me versus time spent doing things for me? The question hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to answer, to defend myself, to list all the ways I served him, all the work I did in his name, but the words died in my throat because I knew what he was getting at. I started, then stopped. Lord, I'm busy, the chosen, the interviews, the appearances, the ministry opportunities. I'm constantly talking about you, representing you, trying to point people to you. I didn't ask about your work, he said gently but firmly. I asked about your time with me. When was the last time you sat in my presence with no agenda, no prayer list to get through, no Bible study to complete, no sermon to prepare, just you and me, in silence, in intimacy, in communion? I couldn't answer, because I couldn't remember. This is the heart of the problem, Jesus said, his voice soft but penetrating. Even my most devoted servants have become so busy serving me that they've forgotten to simply be with me. And when February 8th comes, when the pressure intensifies, when the spiritual assault begins, all that activity, all that busyness, all those programs and projects won't sustain them. Only intimacy will. Only relationship will. Only those who actually know my voice will be able to stand. The vision returned, but now I saw something different. I saw the same beach, the same waves, the same people standing with their backs to the ocean. But now I could see more clearly the ones who were facing the water, the ones who were prepared, and I noticed something I'd missed before. They weren't doing anything spectacular. They weren't performing miracles or casting out demons or preaching to crowds. They were simply standing, anchored, rooted, and around each of them was a sphere of light, not bright and flashy, but steady and constant. And within that light, others were gathering. People who'd been swept up by the waves, who were drowning in fear and confusion, were being drawn to these anchored ones like shipwreck survivors to a lighthouse. This is what I'm preparing, Jesus said, following my gaze. Not an army of performers, not a collection of celebrities, not a movement of personalities, but a remnant of people who know me so intimately that my presence radiates from them without effort, people who've learned to abide, people who've paid the price of intimacy, people who've chosen relationship over reputation, presence over productivity, being over doing. He turned back to me, and now his expression shifted again. The grief was still there, but now there was also hope, fierce, determined hope. February 8th through 14th will be terrible for those who are unprepared, he said, but for those who've been preparing, for those who've been building their foundation on the rock of genuine relationship with me, these 7 days will be their finest hour. They'll discover that everything they've invested in intimacy with me will pay dividends they never imagined. They'll find that they can hear my voice clearly in the chaos, They'll discover that my peace really does surpass understanding. They'll learn that my strength really is made perfect in weakness. The sun was beginning to rise now, the clouds breaking apart to reveal streaks of orange and gold. The beach was transforming before my eyes, darkness giving way to light, the threatening atmosphere of night yielding to the promise of morning. What do I tell them? I asked urgently. What do people need to do to prepare? We have just over a week. How do they build in a week what should have been built over years? Jesus smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. They can't, he said simply. They can't build in a week what should have taken years, but they can start, they can begin, they can take the first step. And I honor every genuine step toward me, no matter how small, no matter how late. He began to walk back toward where we'd started, and I followed, my mind racing, trying to absorb everything I'd seen and heard. Here's what you tell them, he said. Starting right now, today, they need to carve out time, real time, not leftover time, to be with me, not to pray at me, not to read about me, but to actually sit in my presence and learn to recognize my voice. 30 minutes, every day, no phone, no distractions, no agenda, just them and me. 30 minutes, I said. That's it? He stopped and looked at me with an expression that was both amused and sad. Jonathan, for most of my people, 30 minutes of undistracted time in my presence will be the hardest thing they've ever done. They'll discover how addicted they are to noise, to distraction, to constant stimulation. They'll discover how uncomfortable silence makes them. They'll discover how many other voices have been drowning out mine. 30 minutes will feel like an eternity at first. But if they persist, if they push through the discomfort, if they refuse to give up, they'll begin to hear me. And once they hear me, once they recognize my voice, everything changes. The vision came one more time, but now it was different. I saw a calendar, the days from January 31st to February 8th marked clearly, and I saw people, thousands of them, making the choice, getting up early, staying up late, finding quiet places, turning off their phones, opening their Bibles not to study but to encounter, sitting in silence, waiting, listening, learning, and I saw Jesus meeting each one, personally, intimately, speaking to them in ways uniquely designed for them, healing wounds they didn't know they had, revealing truths they'd never seen, building foundations that would hold when the storms came. This is what I'm doing, Jesus said. Even now, even in these final days before February 8th, I'm calling my people back to intimacy, back to first love, back to the simplicity of just being with me. Some will answer, many won't, but those who do, those who make the choice to prioritize relationship over everything else, they're the ones who will stand. They're the ones who will shine. They're the ones who will become refugees for others when everything falls apart. The sun was fully up now, the beach bathed in golden morning light. A few early morning walkers appeared in the distance, their dogs running ahead of them, chasing seagulls. The world was waking up, completely unaware of the conversation that had just taken place on this stretch of sand. Tomorrow night, Jesus said, I'll show you the final pieces, the specific things that will happen during those 7 days, the consequences for those who ignore this warning, and the promises for those who heed it. But for now, go, rest, and then do what I've told you to do. Spend 30 minutes with me today, not preparing to tell others about me, just being with me. You need this as much as anyone. And then he was gone. I stood there for a long time, watching the sun climb higher, watching the beach fill with morning joggers and dog walkers and people starting their normal days. I felt exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. The weight of what I'd been shown was crushing, but the hope of what could be was lifting. I'm sharing this with you now, and I need you to understand something. This isn't just information. This isn't just an interesting story. This is a literal warning from Jesus about what's coming in just over a week. February 8th through 14th, 2026, 7 days that will separate those who truly know him from those who just know about him. And the preparation isn't complicated. It's not about having the right theology or attending the right church or following the right teacher. It's about intimacy. It's about relationship. It's about learning to hear his voice so clearly that no other voice can deceive you. Starting today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, I need you to commit to 30 minutes of undistracted time with God. Turn off your phone. Find a quiet place. Open your Bible if you want, but don't make it a study session. Make it an encounter. Sit in silence. Wait. Listen. Ask him to speak to you. Ask him to show you where your foundation is weak. Ask him to teach you to recognize his voice. It's going to be uncomfortable at first. Your mind is going to wander. You're going to think of 100 things you should be doing instead. You're going to feel like you're wasting time. But push through. Persist. Refuse to give up, because on the other side of that discomfort is a depth of relationship with God that will anchor you when everything else is shaking. Tomorrow night, I'll share the final encounter, the most intense one, the one where Jesus showed me specifically what will happen during those 7 days and what it will cost those who aren't prepared. But more importantly, he showed me the promises for those who are. Leave your prayer requests in the comments. Tell me if you're committing to the 30 minutes. Tell me what God is showing you. This community, we're in this together. We're preparing together. We're going to stand together when the waves come. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with everyone you know who needs to hear it. Time is running out. February 8th is coming, whether we're ready or not. But you can be ready. You can be prepared. You can be one of the ones who stands when everything else is falling. The choice is yours. It was February 1st, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when I woke for the third consecutive night. But this time something was different. This time I woke not to a gentle pull, but to what felt like a hand shaking my shoulder. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart pounding, sweat covering my skin despite the cool temperature of my room. The air in my bedroom felt charged, electric, like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. I knew immediately where I needed to go. I dressed quickly, my hands trembling as I pulled on my jacket. The drive to the beach felt different tonight, shorter somehow, like time itself was compressed, eager to get me there. The streets were empty, the traffic lights cycling through their colors for no one but me. The dashboard clock read 2:58 a.m. when I pulled into the parking lot. But tonight the parking lot wasn't empty. There was another car there, an old sedan with a woman sitting inside, her head bowed, her hands gripping the steering wheel. I could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. For a moment I considered approaching her, asking if she was okay. But something stopped me, a knowing. She was there for her own encounter, her own reasons. This night was full of divine appointments. I made my way down to the beach, and immediately I knew this encounter would be unlike the previous two. The wind was fierce tonight, gusting so hard I had to lean into it to keep my balance. The waves were massive, 8, maybe 10 feet high, crashing onto the shore with a violence that sent spray 50 feet into the air. The sky was clear, and the stars were so bright, so numerous, they looked like someone had thrown diamonds across black velvet. But on the horizon, I could see something building, dark clouds, lit from within by lightning that never quite broke free, rolling toward the shore like an army on the march. The temperature had dropped even further. I'd guess it was in the low 40s, and with the wind chill, it felt like the 30s. My breath came out in thick clouds that were immediately torn away by the wind. The sand stung my face, carried by the gale like tiny needles. I walked to our spot, and yes, it had become our spot over these 3 nights, and I didn't have to wait at all. Jesus was already there, but tonight he looked different again. The grief was still present, but now it was mixed with something that made my knees weak. Righteous anger, holy fire, the kind of intensity that made me understand why people in the Bible fell on their faces when they encountered him. This wasn't the gentle Jesus of children's Sunday school pictures. This was the Jesus who overturned tables in the temple, the Jesus whose eyes were like flames of fire, the Jesus who will one day return as a conquering king. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice cut through the wind like a sword. "Are you ready to see what I've been protecting you from seeing? Are you ready to understand the full weight of what's coming?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be brave. But all I could do was nod, because my voice had abandoned me. He raised his hand, and the vision that came over me was so intense, so overwhelming, that I fell to my knees in the sand. The physical beach was still there. I could still feel the wind, still hear the waves, but overlaid on top of it was a spiritual reality so vivid it was more real than the physical world. I saw the calendar again, but this time it was massive, filling the sky like a movie screen. February 8th, 2026, Saturday, and as I watched, that date began to pulse with a dark red light. "February 8th, Jesus said, his voice resonating with authority that made the very air vibrate. "The day the enemy has been preparing for. The day when multiple crises will converge. Financial, political, natural, but more than any of that, spiritual." The vision zoomed in, and I began to see specific events. I need to be careful here because I don't want to cause panic, but I also can't soften what I was shown. I saw stock markets around the world experiencing unprecedented volatility. I saw political leaders making decisions that would send shockwaves through nations. I saw natural disasters, earthquakes, storms, floods, striking in places that weren't prepared for them. But these weren't the main event. They were the stage being set. The external chaos, Jesus explained, is designed to create fear, and fear is the doorway the enemy will use to assault my people. Because when people are afraid, when they're panicking, when they're desperate, they become vulnerable to deception. They stop thinking clearly, they stop discerning, they grab onto anything that promises security, even if that security is a lie. The vision shifted, and now I was seeing inside churches. It was Sunday, February 9th. Congregations were gathering, and the atmosphere was tense. People were checking their phones constantly, whispering to each other about the news, about what was happening in the world. And I could see, in the spiritual realm, demonic forces moving through the crowds like sharks through water. But they weren't attacking with obvious evil. They were whispering, planting thoughts. God has abandoned you. Your prayers don't work. You're not really saved. You've sinned too much. It's too late. You're alone. No one can help you. This is the end. And I watched in horror as believer after believer, people who'd been Christians for years, decades even, began to crumble under the assault. Not because the attacks were so powerful, but because they had no defense. They'd never learned to recognize the enemy's voice. They'd never built the intimacy with God that would allow them to hear his voice above the chaos. They'd never developed the spiritual muscles needed to stand under pressure. I saw pastors in their pulpits, trying to preach messages of hope, but their own faith was shaking. I saw worship leaders leading songs they didn't believe in that moment. I saw small group leaders trying to encourage others while drowning in their own doubt. The blind leading the blind, and both falling into the pit. This is what happens, Jesus said, and the pain in his voice was almost unbearable, when my people build their faith on sand, when they build on feelings instead of truth, on experiences instead of relationship, on the approval of others instead of intimacy with me. When the storm comes, and it is coming, those foundations cannot hold. The vision continued through the week, February 10th, Monday, the chaos intensifying, more news breaking, more fear spreading. And now I saw the divisions starting, churches splitting over how to respond, families arguing, friendships ending, social media becoming a battlefield of accusations and counter-accusations, everyone claiming to speak for God, but so few actually hearing from him. February 11th, Tuesday. I saw people abandoning their faith entirely, not dramatically, not with big announcements, just quietly walking away, deciding that if this is what Christianity is, if this fear, this confusion, this powerlessness is what following Jesus looks like, then they want no part of it. And the tragedy was that they were right to walk away from what they'd been shown, because what they'd been shown wasn't true Christianity. It was a hollow shell, a form of godliness without power. February 12th, Wednesday, the midpoint of the 7 days. And this was when I saw the deception reach its peak. False prophets, and I mean people who genuinely believed they were hearing from God but were actually hearing from demons, began to rise up with messages that sounded spiritual, sounded biblical, but were leading people away from truth. Messages about escaping judgment, messages about special revelations, messages that appealed to fear and pride and the desire for insider knowledge. And people were following them. Desperate people, scared people, people who'd never learned to test the spirits, who'd never developed discernment, who'd never spent enough time in God's presence to recognize when something was off. This is why intimacy matters, Jesus said, his voice cutting through my horror. This is why I've been calling my people back to relationship, because when you know my voice, when you really know it, when you've spent hours and days and years learning its tone and cadence and character, you can't be deceived. The counterfeit becomes obvious, the false becomes clear. But if you've never learned my voice, if you've only heard about me secondhand, if your entire faith is built on what others have told you about me, then when the pressure comes, you have no anchor, no reference point, no way to distinguish truth from lies. The vision moved to February 13th, Thursday. And now I saw something that made me weep. I saw believers, genuine believers who loved God but who'd been unprepared, beginning to experience breakdowns, mental, emotional, spiritual. The weight of the fear, the confusion, the sense of abandonment was crushing them. And the medical system, already strained, couldn't handle the influx. Hospitals filling with people having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, psychological breaks. But here's what broke my heart most. It didn't have to be this way. These were people who loved God, who'd served Him, who'd tried to follow Him, but they'd been taught a version of Christianity that was all about information and activity, not transformation and intimacy. They'd been given a map to God instead of a relationship with God, and when the crisis came, the map wasn't enough. February 14th, Valentine's Day, the final day of the 7, and the vision showed me something I'll never forget. I saw the separation becoming complete. On one side, I saw the believers who'd been prepared, the ones who'd invested in intimacy, the ones who'd learned to hear God's voice, and they were standing. Not because they were stronger or smarter or more spiritual, but because they were anchored. They'd built on rock, and while they were being battered by the same storms as everyone else, they weren't being moved. And around them, I saw others gathering, people who'd been swept away by the chaos, who were drowning in fear, who were desperate for something real. And these anchored believers were becoming lighthouses, refuges, safe harbors in the storm. Not because they had all the answers, but because they had the presence. They knew how to access peace in the chaos. They knew how to hear God's voice above the noise. They knew how to stand when everything was shaking. On the other side, I saw the unprepared believers, and the scene was heartbreaking. They were scattered, isolated, drowning. Some were angry at God. Some had given up entirely. Some were clinging to false teachers and false prophets, desperate for anyone who would tell them what they wanted to hear. The separation wasn't about salvation. These were still God's children, but it was about effectiveness, about influence, about who would be used in the days ahead and who would be sidelined by their own unpreparedness. This is the shaking, Jesus said, and now his voice carried both judgment and mercy. This is what I've been warning about through my prophets, through my word, through the signs all around. I'm shaking everything that can be shaken so that what cannot be shaken will remain. I'm exposing every weak foundation so my people will finally understand that they need to build on me, not on programs, not on personalities, not on positions, but on me, on relationship with me, on intimacy with me. The vision released me, and I found myself back on the physical beach, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face, my body shaking from more than just the cold. The storm on the horizon had moved closer. Lightning was striking the ocean now, brilliant forks of white light that illuminated the massive waves. The wind had reached a fever pitch, howling like something alive and angry. Jesus knelt beside me in the sand, and when he placed his hand on my shoulder, warmth flooded through me despite the cold. "I know this is hard," he said gently. "I know it's overwhelming, but you need to understand the stakes. You need to understand what's coming so you can warn people, so you can help them prepare, because there's still time. Not much, but enough. Enough for those who will listen. Enough for those who will act. Enough for those who will finally prioritize what matters most." I looked up at him, and the intensity in his eyes had softened slightly, though the fire was still there. "What about those who don't prepare?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "What about those who hear this warning and ignore it? What happens to them?" His expression grew sad again. "They'll survive," he said. "Most of them will survive physically, but spiritually, they'll be wounded in ways that will take years to heal. They'll lose opportunities to be used by me in the days ahead. They'll miss the purpose I had for them in this season, and they'll carry regret, deep, painful regret that they didn't listen when they had the chance." He stood, pulling me to my feet with him. The storm was almost upon us now. The first drops of rain were beginning to fall, cold and hard. "But those who do prepare," he continued, his voice rising above the wind, "those who take these warnings seriously, those who invest in intimacy with me starting right now, they're going to experience things they never imagined possible. They're going to see my power manifested in ways this generation hasn't seen. They're going to be part of the greatest harvest of souls in human history. They're going to stand as witnesses to my faithfulness when everything else is failing. They're going to discover that everything they've invested in relationship with me will pay dividends beyond their wildest dreams." Lightning struck close by, so close I could smell the ozone, and the thunder that followed was deafening, but Jesus didn't flinch. He stood there solid and unmovable while the storm raged around him. "This is your final night of revelation," he said. "Tomorrow, you'll share the practical steps, the specific things people need to do. But tonight, I need you to understand the full picture. I need you to see both the judgment and the mercy, both the warning and the promise, both the cost of ignoring this and the reward of heeding it. He turned to face the ocean, and I stood beside him, watching the massive waves crash onto the shore, watching the lightning illuminate the dark water, watching the storm unleash its fury. In the Bible, he said, I told my disciples that I would build my church and the gates of hell would not prevail against it. That promise still stands. The church, my true church, my bride, the ones who actually know me, will not be overcome. But that doesn't mean there won't be casualties. That doesn't mean there won't be losses. That doesn't mean everyone who calls themselves by my name will stand. He turned back to me, and now his eyes were blazing with holy fire. February 8th through 14th is coming. It cannot be stopped. It will not be delayed. The enemy has been preparing for this, and I'm allowing it because my people need to be shaken. They need to wake up. They need to understand that casual Christianity, comfortable Christianity, cultural Christianity, none of that will survive what's ahead. Only those who truly know me, who've built their lives on the foundation of intimate relationship with me, will stand. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through my jacket, plastering my hair to my head. But I didn't care. I couldn't look away from him. Go home, he said. Rest, process what you've seen. And tomorrow night, share the practical steps. Tell people exactly what they need to do. Give them the roadmap. Give them the tools. Give them hope. Because there is hope. There's always hope for those who will turn to me. For those who will prioritize relationship over everything else. For those who will finally understand that knowing me, actually knowing me, is the only thing that matters. And then, as the storm reached its peak, as lightning and thunder and wind and rain created a symphony of chaos around us, he was gone. I stood there alone, drenched and shaking, but somehow more certain than I'd ever been about anything in my life. This was real. This was happening. February 8th through 14th would be exactly what he'd shown me, and people needed to know. People needed to prepare. I made my way back to my car, the storm following me, the wind pushing me forward like a hand on my back. The woman who'd been in the parking lot was gone. I wondered what her encounter had been like. I wondered if she'd received the same warnings. I wondered if she'd heed them. As I drove home through the storm, the streets flooding, the wind rocking my car, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. I'd been given this revelation not for myself alone, but to share, to warn, to help people prepare. And I wouldn't shrink back from that responsibility, no matter how hard it was, no matter who mocked or dismissed or explained it away, because I'd seen what was coming. I'd seen both the judgment and the mercy. I'd seen both the cost of unpreparedness and the reward of intimacy, and I'd been marked, chosen, commissioned to sound the alarm. Tomorrow night, I'll share part 4, the practical steps, the specific things you need to do to prepare, the 30-minute daily challenge that will transform your relationship with God, the roadmap that will help you build a foundation that can withstand what's coming. But tonight, right now, I need you to do something. I need you to get on your knees, literally, physically, get on your knees, and ask God if what I'm sharing is true. Don't take my word for it. Don't just accept it because it sounds dramatic or because you like the chosen. Ask him directly, and then listen. Actually listen. Wait in silence for his response. Because if this is true, and I'm telling you with every fiber of my being that it is, then you have 7 days to prepare, 7 days to build what should have been built over years, 7 days to learn to hear his voice clearly enough that you won't be deceived when the chaos comes. 7 days. That's all the time we have left. Leave your prayer requests below. Tell me what God is showing you. Tell me if you're committing to preparation. Share this with everyone you know who needs to hear it. The storm is coming, but you don't have to be swept away. Tomorrow night, I'll show you how to anchor yourself in the only foundation that will hold. I didn't go back to the beach on February 2nd at 2:47 a.m. Not because I didn't want to, not because the pull wasn't there, but because when I woke at that exact time, and yes, I woke at precisely 2:47 a.m., I heard his voice clearly in my spirit. Stay. Write. Tell them how to prepare. So I'm writing this now, in the early morning hours of February 2nd, 2026, with 6 days remaining until February 8th. 6 days until everything I've been shown begins to unfold. 6 days for you to build a foundation that will hold when the shaking comes. But before I give you the practical steps, I need to tell you what happened when I went back to the beach yesterday afternoon, February 1st, in the daylight, after my third encounter with Jesus. I needed to see that place again in the light. I needed to process everything I'd been shown. I needed to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. The beach looked completely different in the afternoon sun. The storm from the night before had passed, leaving the sand smooth and clean, washed by the rain. The ocean was calm, almost glassy, with small waves that barely made a sound as they rolled onto the shore. Families were there, children building sand castles, couples walking hand in hand, teenagers playing volleyball. Normal life, everyday life, life completely unaware of what was coming. I walked to our spot, the place where I'd met with Jesus 3 nights in a row, and I stood there looking out at the peaceful ocean and I wept, not from fear, not from despair, but from the weight of knowing, the weight of seeing both realities at once, the calm surface and the storm beneath, the normal day and the approaching crisis, the unprepared masses and the prepared remnant. An older man approached me while I was standing there. He must have been in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes, walking a golden retriever. "Beautiful day," he said, stopping beside me. "Yes," I replied, wiping my eyes. "Beautiful." "You okay, son?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. I looked at him, this stranger, and I felt the Holy Spirit prompt me. "Can I ask you something? Do you know Jesus?" His expression shifted, became more serious. "I do. Been following him for 43 years. "Can I ask you another question?" I said. "When was the last time you spent 30 minutes alone with him? Not reading about him, not praying at him, just sitting in his presence, listening?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hand absently stroking his dog's head. Then he smiled sadly. "I can't remember. Isn't that terrible? 43 years of being a Christian, and I can't remember the last time I just sat with him." "You're not alone," I said. "That's the problem. That's what he's been showing me. We've become so busy doing things for him that we've forgotten to be with him." The man nodded slowly. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. And you know what I realized during that time? I didn't know how to hear God's voice. Not really. I knew Bible verses. I knew theology. I knew all the right Christian answers. But when I needed to actually hear him speak comfort to my soul, when I needed his presence more than anything, I didn't know how to access it. I'd never built that intimacy." We talked for another 20 minutes, this stranger and I, standing on that beach. I told him about the encounters, about the warnings, about February 8th through 14th, and he listened with tears streaming down his weathered face. "I believe you," he said when I finished. "I don't know why, but I believe every word. What do I do? How do I prepare in 6 days?" And that's when I knew. That's when I understood why Jesus had told me to stay home and write instead of coming back to the beach, because the final message wasn't another vision. It wasn't another dramatic encounter. It was practical. It was actionable. It was a roadmap that anyone could follow if they were willing. So here it is. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you prepare for what's coming. The 30-minute daily encounter. Starting today, right now, as soon as you finish reading this, you need to commit to 30 minutes every single day of undistracted time with God. Not tomorrow, not when you have more time, not when life calms down. Today, now. Here's exactly how to do it. Step 1. Eliminate all distractions. 5 minutes to set up. Turn off your phone. Not on silent, not face down, off. Put it in another room if you have to. This is non-negotiable. You cannot learn to hear God's voice while your phone is buzzing with notifications, while you're wondering who's texting you, while you're tempted to check social media just for a second. Find a quiet place. It doesn't have to be fancy. A bedroom, a closet, a car parked somewhere quiet, a park bench. Anywhere you can be alone and undisturbed for 30 minutes. Tell your family or roommates not to interrupt you unless it's an actual emergency. This time is sacred. This time is essential. This time might be the difference between standing and falling when February 8th comes. Step 2. Come with empty hands. First 5 minutes. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes, take several deep breaths, and here's the key. Don't come with an agenda. Don't come with a prayer list. Don't come with Bible study goals. Don't come trying to accomplish anything. Just come. Come like a child climbing into their father's lap. Come like a friend sitting with a friend. Come like a bride with her beloved. Come with empty hands and an open heart. In these first 5 minutes, simply acknowledge his presence. Say something like, "Jesus, I'm here. I'm choosing to be with you. Teach me to recognize your voice. Teach me to know you, not just know about you." That's it. Simple, honest, vulnerable. Step 3. Sit in silence. Next 10 minutes. This is where it gets hard. This is where most people fail, because sitting in silence, actual silence, not praying, not reading, not doing anything, is incredibly uncomfortable at first. Your mind will wander, guaranteed. You'll think about your to-do list. You'll remember something you forgot to do. You'll get an itch. You'll feel restless. You'll think this is a waste of time. Push through. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back. Don't get frustrated with yourself. Don't give up. Just keep returning your attention to his presence. Keep sitting. Keep waiting. Keep listening. You're not listening for an audible voice. You're listening with your spirit. You're learning to recognize the still, small voice that speaks beneath the noise of your thoughts. You're developing spiritual sensitivity that's been dulled by years of distraction and busyness. In these 10 minutes, you might not hear anything. That's okay. You're building a foundation. You're creating space. You're demonstrating to God that you value his presence more than productivity, and he honors that, always. Step 4. Read scripture as encounter. Next 10 minutes. Now open your Bible, but don't read it like a textbook. Don't read it to check off a chapter. Don't read it to gain information. Read it as a love letter. Read it as God speaking directly to you. Read it slowly, meditatively, listening for what the Holy Spirit wants to highlight. I recommend starting with the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Read about Jesus. Watch how he interacts with people. Listen to his words. Pay attention to his heart. Read a passage, maybe just a few verses, and then stop. Sit with it. Ask God, what are you saying to me through this? What do you want me to see? What do you want me to understand? And then listen. Wait. Pay attention to the thoughts that come, the impressions, the gentle nudges in your spirit. This is how he speaks, not usually with dramatic voices or visions, but with gentle whispers, with highlighted words, with peace that confirms truth. Step 5. Respond and commit. Final 5 minutes. In these last 5 minutes, respond to whatever God has shown you. Maybe it's worship, maybe it's confession, maybe it's gratitude, maybe it's a commitment to obey something he's revealed. Talk to him like he's right there with you, because he is. Tell him what you're feeling. Tell him your fears about February 8th through 14th. Tell him your doubts. Tell him everything. He can handle your honesty. He prefers it to religious pretense. And then commit to coming back tomorrow. Same time if possible. Same place if possible. Consistency matters. Routine matters. You're building a habit of intimacy that will become your lifeline when the chaos comes. The reality check. Now, I need to be honest with you about something. 30 minutes is going to feel impossible at first. You're going to check the clock after what feels like an hour and discover only 7 minutes have passed. You're going to feel like you're doing it wrong. You're going to be tempted to quit. Don't. The discomfort you feel is actually proof that you need this. It's revealing how addicted you've become to noise, to distraction, to constant stimulation. It's exposing how shallow your spiritual roots have been. It's showing you why you're not prepared for what's coming. But if you persist, if you show up every day for these next 6 days, and then continue through February 8th through 14th and beyond, something will shift. You'll begin to recognize his voice. You'll begin to sense his presence. You'll begin to experience a peace that doesn't make logical sense. You'll begin to build the foundation that will hold when everything else is shaking. I met with that older man from the beach again this morning. He'd done his first 30-minute session yesterday afternoon after we talked. He called me, his voice shaking with emotion. "Jonathan," he said, "I heard him. For the first time in I don't know how long, I actually heard his voice, not audibly, but in my spirit. Clear as day. He told me he's never left me. He told me he's been waiting for me to stop talking long enough to listen. He told me the next season is going to be hard, but I don't have to face it alone." This man, this 70-something-year-old believer who'd been a Christian for over 4 decades, was weeping like a child because he'd finally experienced what he'd been missing all along. Intimacy, connection, relationship. That's what's available to you. That's what these 30 minutes will build. That's what will anchor you when February 8th comes. The specific warnings for February 8th to 14th. Based on everything Jesus showed me, here's what you need to know about those 7 days. February 8th, Saturday. The external chaos begins. News will break that will send shockwaves through financial markets, political systems, and social structures. Don't panic. Don't make rash decisions. Don't let fear dictate your actions. Instead, go to your quiet place. Spend your 30 minutes with God. Listen for his specific guidance for you and your family. February 9th, Sunday. Churches will be full of fearful people looking for answers. Many pastors will try to provide comfort through human wisdom instead of divine presence. Be discerning. Test everything against Scripture and against what you're hearing in your personal time with God. Don't follow the crowd. Follow the shepherd. February 10th or 12th, Monday, Wednesday. The spiritual assault intensifies. You'll feel it. Doubt will whisper. Fear will knock. Confusion will try to cloud your thinking. This is when your 30-minute daily encounter becomes non-negotiable. This is when the foundation you've been building will be tested. Stand firm. Keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep anchoring yourself in His presence. February 13th, Thursday. This will likely be the hardest day. The pressure will peak. Many believers will break. But this is also when the prepared ones will begin to shine. People will start noticing that you have something they don't. Peace in chaos, clarity in confusion, strength in weakness. Be ready to point them to the source. February 14th, Friday, the final day of the 7. By this point, the separation will be clear. Those who've been prepared will be standing strong, becoming refugees for others. Those who weren't prepared will be scattered, wounded, struggling. Use this day to reach out, to help, to share what you've learned, to bring others into the intimacy you've discovered. The biblical foundation. Everything I'm sharing isn't new revelation. It's not extra biblical. It's not adding to Scripture. It's simply echoing what God has been saying throughout His Word. Matthew 7:24-27. Build your house on the rock of hearing and obeying Jesus' words, not on sand. John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. John 15:4-5. Abide in me, and I in you. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Psalm 46:10. Be still, and know that I am God. 1 Kings 19:11-12. God speaks not in the earthquake or fire, but in the still, small voice. James 4:8. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. This isn't complicated theology. This isn't mysterious spirituality. This is basic Christianity. This is what Jesus modeled for us: regular, consistent, intimate time with the Father. This is what every great saint throughout history has practiced. This is what the early church understood that we've somehow forgotten. And now, with 6 days until February 8th, God is giving us one final opportunity to get it right. The deadline. Here's what you need to understand. February 8th is coming whether you're ready or not. The calendar doesn't care about your excuses. The enemy doesn't care about your busy schedule. The storm doesn't care that you meant to prepare but never got around to it. You have 6 days. 6 days to build what should have been built over years. 6 days to develop intimacy that should have been your priority all along. 6 days to learn to hear God's voice clearly enough that you won't be deceived when the chaos comes. Can you build in 6 days what should have taken years? No. But you can start. You can lay a foundation. You can create a habit. You can open a door that's been closed. You can take the first steps on a journey that will transform your life. And God honors every genuine step toward Him, no matter how small, no matter how late. But you have to start today, not tomorrow, not next week. Today. The challenge. So here's what I'm asking you to do, what I'm begging you to do. Commit publicly. Right now in the comments below, type, I commit to 30 minutes daily with God starting today. Public commitment creates accountability. Set a specific time. Don't leave it to chance. Don't wait for a convenient moment. Schedule it like you'd schedule a doctor's appointment. Early morning works best for most people, before the day's demands crowd in, but find what works for you and protect that time fiercely. Prepare your space. Identify where you'll meet with God. Make sure it's quiet, private, and free from distractions. Set it up today so you're ready. Tell someone. Share this message with at least 3 people who need to hear it. Not to create panic, but to help them prepare. You might save their spiritual life. Track your progress. Each day after your 30 minutes, write down one thing God showed you, one thing you heard, one impression you received. You'll be amazed at how quickly you begin to recognize His voice. Don't quit. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how uncomfortable it feels, no matter how much your flesh rebels, don't quit. Show up every single day. February 8th through 14th and beyond. Make this your new normal. The promise. Here's what Jesus promised me to tell you. If you do this, if you commit to these 30 minutes daily, if you prioritize intimacy over everything else, if you learn to hear His voice, you will not be shaken when February 8th comes. You'll still face the same external circumstances as everyone else. You'll still see the news. You'll still experience the chaos. But you'll have an anchor. You'll have a foundation. You'll have access to a peace that surpasses understanding. You'll have the ability to hear God's specific guidance for your specific situation. And more than that, you'll become a lighthouse for others. People will see something different in you. They'll see stability and instability. They'll see peace and panic. They'll see strength and weakness. And they'll ask you what you have that they don't. And you'll be able to tell them, I have intimacy with God. I've learned to hear His voice. I've built my life on the foundation of relationship with Him. And that foundation is holding. The personal testimony. I need to be vulnerable with you about something. When Jesus first started showing me these things, my initial reaction was to run, to hide, to pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, because sharing this, putting myself out there like this, opens me up to mockery, to criticism, to people questioning my sanity or my motives. But then I remembered, I've been marked, you've been marked. We've been chosen to hear this warning, not for ourselves alone, but to share it, to help others prepare, to be part of the remnant that stands when everything else is falling. And I realized that my comfort, my reputation, my fear of what people might think, none of that matters compared to the possibility of helping even one person build a foundation that will hold. So, I'm sharing this. I'm putting it all out there. And I'm trusting that those who have ears to hear will hear, that those who've been marked will recognize the truth in these words, that those who are hungry for something real will respond. The final call. It's February 2nd, 2026. In 6 days, everything changes. In 6 days, the shaking begins. In 6 days, we'll see who's been building on rock and who's been building on sand. The question is, which one will you be? Will you be among the prepared ones, the ones who took the warning seriously, who invested in intimacy, who learned to hear God's voice, the ones who stand firm when everything else is shaking, the ones who become refugees for others? Or will you be among the unprepared, the ones who heard the warning but explained it away, who meant to prepare but never got around to it, who discovered too late that casual Christianity can't withstand serious storms? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. God won't force you. He won't drag you into intimacy. He won't make you prioritize relationship with Him. He offers it. He invites you. He waits for you. But the choice to respond is yours. I went back to the beach one final time this afternoon just before sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, the ocean calm and peaceful, the sand cool beneath my feet. I stood in our spot, the place where Jesus had met me 3 nights in a row, and I felt His presence again, not visibly this time, not dramatically, but unmistakably, and I heard Him whisper in my spirit, "Tell them I'm waiting, tell them I'm ready, tell them that no matter how far they've drifted, no matter how long it's been, no matter how unprepared they feel, I'm here. I'm waiting, and if they'll just show up, if they'll just create the space, if they'll just prioritize intimacy, I'll meet them, I'll teach them, I'll prepare them, I'll anchor them." That's the message, that's the hope, that's the promise. He's waiting for you. The question is, will you show up? You have 6 days. Make them count. Leave your commitment in the comments below. Tell me you're choosing intimacy. Tell me you're prioritizing relationship. Tell me you're preparing for what's coming. Share this message with everyone who needs to hear it. And starting today, right now, begin your 30-minute daily encounter with the God who loves you more than you can imagine. February 8th is coming, but you don't have to face it unprepared. The anchor is available. The foundation can be built. The intimacy is offered. All you have to do is show up.